From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In this podcast, I sit down with my good friend Brian Gardner, and we talk about all things modern WordPress. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation that Brian and I had. This podcast is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing agency for all your business needs. We are also your WordPress security experts, having over 14 years of experience locking down, backing up, and protecting WordPress websites. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com for more info or stunningdigitalmarketing.info for links to everywhere we can be found on the web. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And in today's podcast, I'm joined by my good friend Brian Gardner of WP Engine. How are you, Brian?
Rob, I am fine this almost summer morning here in Chicago.
Yeah, they call Toronto and Chicago twin cities for a reason, and I'm looking out the window and it's just as fine here. No more rain for a change. We're done with that, right?
So, yes. Warm temps is on our way.
Yeah. So I thought we'd get you back on for a second time to talk a little bit about modern WordPress. But before we do that, I want to jump into this amazing group that you and Sam run on Fridays called Build Mode through your work at WP Engine. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And let's try and get some new people out at Build Mode because I think it'd be really helpful for them.
Yeah, so Build Mode is the culmination of our efforts at WP Engine's developer relations team. Sam is the community manager. I am developer advocate. We have Damon Cook, who's also a developer advocate. And essentially, it's our job to sort of help folks in the WordPress community understand what's coming with the WordPress block editor, obviously tie in some of our products as it relates to that local being an example, Frost WordPress theme as an example. We've got a pattern manager plugin by our WordPress product team. And so what we're trying to do is sort of facilitate community and help instruct and just educate people on how they can use the new version of WordPress. We kind of call it modern WordPress, right? Which is essentially a block-based building. And we want to help people bring that into their business and use that as a way to sort of foster the community while educating them at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's really key. And I think anybody that wants to learn about modern WordPress, and I really like that term, so you've coined it, and you need to trademark it, but that's side the point. And anybody wants to learn, come join us Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern time. It's I was saying to you before we went to record, and you know my feelings on Build Mode. It's kind of my must hour of the week. It's refreshing. The people are great. We don't bite, by the way, so we're all pretty open. We've had chats. Last week was local WP, which was a great chat. The week before was AI with a little demo from Dustin Stout, which was absolutely amazing. The topics are kind of all over the map. So bring your questions and come join us, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. So there's a lot going on with you. Congratulations were in order. Frost finally hit the repo.
Yeah, that was almost 2 years in the making. When I originally built Frost, it was before I came on to WP Engine, sort of as a reaction to, hey, I think I finally get where WordPress is going with all of this Gutenberg and block editor stuff. And I saw the system that was being built. And of course, it's taken some time to get there. It's not fully there yet. It's significantly further ahead than it was a year, or 2 or 3 ago. I'll say that. And so Frost was sort of our experimental theme. We brought it into WP Engine when I was hired. And it's something the developer relations team has sort of built and fostered as part of our demonstration to give back to the community. But WordPress 6.2, the latest release here, really leveled out all of the capabilities of the editor, the settings, theme JSON, all of that stuff to a point where I felt it was time to bring it to the mainstream. So taking Frost out of the experimental mode, it had always sort of had the reliance on Gutenberg to plug in. And I was like, WordPress 6.2 is really at a place where I think WordPress themes can become production ready. And Frost at that point was the obvious choice for us because it was our theme that we've been building for so long. And so we're thrilled to have that in the repository.
Yeah, I love Frost. I'm running Frost on my .info site. One of the things you include with Frost is a pattern to create a link tree type site. So, I would encourage anybody, for the sake of $10, go register a domain and do it yourself. Like, don't give link tree all your juice. Use Frost. Like it's easy peasy. Yep. I'm running Frost. I was in experimental mode, but I'm not anymore on a couple client sites because, as you know, I like to live on the edge, Brian, and I play that game. But it gets you into trouble sometimes, but it also gives me a bit of an edge. So I've been running it. So well done to you and your team. It's so well deserved.
Thank you very much.
No, it's been a good job. While we talk about WordPress, just for we get to Modern WordPress, I saw this morning at time of this record, WordPress 6.2.1 has hit the release candidate stage. I think RC1 came out yesterday, right? Is there anything earth-shattering in it beyond a couple bug fixes? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so. I went through the changelog just to see. My guess is that there's a little bit of refinement if you kind of sift through the issues on GitHub. Probably a little bit of refinement on some of the features that were shipped in 6.2. I don't think anything that would be monumental, only because as quick as this came out for a release candidate and ultimately a 0.01 update, my guess is that it just fixed a few things and maybe sort of just enhanced a couple of the features that may have been already there, but nothing earth-shattering.
Yeah. And question I've been meaning to ask you in build mode, I haven't, so I'll ask it here. What do you make of all the security issues we're running into lately? And that's kind of my ball of wax. So you always comment in build mode, oh, security, Rob's woken up again. No.
Yeah.
I know last week we had 160, if you read the iThemes list, vulnerabilities out there. The two biggest ones being ACF, which got patched right away, and there was Updraft Plus, which has not been patched still, believe it or not. The week before they were over 100. And then I kind of look at all the stuff going on in the SaaS and the internet space, and Kathy Zant over at Stellar will tell you I dubbed this year in January as a year of the vulnerability. So what do you think of all that stuff going on? Is it just the times, or is it more than that?
It's probably just the times. And admittedly, I'm not a huge security buff when it comes to anything. In fact, when we built Genesis framework back in the day, we hired Mark Jaquith, who's been around WordPress forever, significantly in the security aspect of Genesis. He did a security audit and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been sort of in the outsourced mindset of that, just because I don't understand it and I don't pretend to understand it. So, I know this stuff exists. I know exploits happen. I don't know how they work necessarily, but so
I get that. Yeah. So let's jump into Modern WordPress. You and I have both been excited about this for a long time for different reasons. I was all in with page builders. I haven't built a site in the last 2 years that's not Modern WordPress based. As you know, I'm kind of invested in both Frost and Cadence. So that's kind of where I sit. And I have for a while. I think our mutual friend, Peter Ingersoll, is also Peter's invested in Cadence as well. Him and I have had a couple of chats. Do you like where it's going? Do you have issues with what's happening? Kind of where do you sit right now?
I love where it's going. Not just I love where it's going. I love where it is actually already, because just a lot of really cool things that can happen. A few things I don't like are the fact that you can do things in several different ways, which means for a person like me who's looking for sort of a source of truth or certifiable, this is the way to do it. I don't necessarily get to do that. And so as a person who second guesses himself all the time, I'm like, is this the right way to do this, or should I do it that way? So sometimes having too many options, it's always a great thing generally. But for me and someone who likes to build products and wants to do it, because there's ways to do it for yourself, and then there's ways to do it for other people, which in this sort of time of WordPress they differ. And so it's tough because I can build something for myself and say, this is all I need. And then as I think about it, like another person taking it over, or like trying to understand it, they don't spend all day, every day inside of the code and understand how it all works. So like I could build stuff in the editor that I would have to sort of build a child theme for a consumer to digest. And so that's the part of it that I'm just like, I just wish there was just one way to do all the things that just make it all easier, but love where it's at.
Now, I think what people need to do, and I don't care if you're running a page builder or you're running Modern WordPress, whatever you decide, is to, decide on your WordPress stack. And by that, I mean, what plugins you use, what theme you use, what add-ons you use, and just be done. Because I think where agencies often make the mistake is they jump all over the place, depending on the site they're building. I think that's a really bad idea, honestly, Brian.
Yeah, I've been on a huge campaign over the last several months around sort of the idea of forking themes, building a base theme and whatever, because I feel like the best way, especially for people who are building a business, building websites, and that's their service, they really should have at the core of it their own version of something, right? Because in other words, something that they own, they maintain. And I understand that requires some work, some time, and some just confidence in their ability to do that. Because otherwise there's semblances of digital sharecropping, right? Like you're at the will, and I talk about this often, you're at the will and the mercies and the decisions of people who build products for their own reasons. They make changes and that affects you. And if you're cool with rolling with that, because it's just sort of the trade-off of not having to spend time learning on how to build stuff, that's okay, right? There's no right or wrong way. But I think in today's age, especially with the Create Block Theme plugin that exists now, there's so many just easy ways to take a theme, clone it, make it your own, and then run with it. That way you have full control over like what it looks like, how it functions, when the updates happen. There's just so many systems in place for an agency or a freelancer who are building WordPress websites to do stuff that now makes their development time shorter than it ever used to be.
Yeah, what I'll tell you is I'm working on a WooCommerce site right now. It will probably end up with close to 500 to 1,000 products. I will also tell you the theme is Frost, so you can smile all your way to the bank on that
There
one.
we go.
And no, I'm not just dropping. It's for a jewelry store. And my development time on this site will probably be 1/8 of what it would have been using a page builder. And that's because I have my processes in place, so that's really good. And B, I run the standard stack, and I know enough now after playing with Modern WordPress and with Cadence blocks and with Frost enough, I know how to manipulate well that it's easy. And I think where a lot of agencies get stuck is they don't want to invest the ROI time on learning something new, to be honest with you.
And Rob, that's short-sighted. I mean, I really feel that people who spend an hour or two trying to figure out how to learn something will save themselves so much more, not even down the road, like literally the week after they learn it, right? There's so many things, and page builders are great and they have their time, but I think there's a lot of myth happening right now where people are, they think, sort of a false belief, they think WordPress can't do what their page builder does, and so they're unwilling to even like hear the message or try it themselves. And maybe it's just old habits die young. Like people, we're creatures of habit, and so it's easy to rely on something that you've always used. That doesn't mean it's the right thing either for the customer or for your process. You're at security risk, you're at performance risk. WordPress core update risk, you just never know like what a WordPress update will do to a page builder's infrastructure. So that's why I get so excited now, because I feel like WordPress core and the packaging of WordPress core, blocks and patterns and all that kind of stuff, templates, really make it easy to do the things that I think people have historically found it hard to do. Yeah.
And you and I, we're both learners and we like to learn. And that's a big part of what you do. It's a big part of what I do. It's kind of why I survived over 30 years in tech is because well, you have to be. And it's funny. I was saying to somebody the other day, Brian, when I got into tech, things changed every year. I was thinking back to my first year when I got out of programming. I'm an old style programmer and coder and got into support. And I was saying things changed every year. And now things are changing like every day. And you can thank tools like AI for pushing that, right? So,
yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's so true. As we move forward, one of the biggest qualms I have with Modern WordPress, I don't have a lot. I wish we'd get the block locking like down, because I've had a couple customers decide to move this here, and you're laughing at me, but you know where this goes, and move that here and say, I wonder why I broke it. Like that's something I think we got to get down like real quickly. What do you think?
So personally, I will admit, that feature affects me personally way less than it does anybody else, because I never have a need to do that, because I don't really do agency work or freelance or custom projects or whatever. Now, my job at WP Engine means I engage with lots of folks who this matters a lot to, agencies and freelancers and builders. So from that perspective, it matters to me a lot, where we have to sort of encourage these people. And yes, for the reasons that you said, I want to see that become more mature, so that people will have less reason to resist WordPress, because I feel like there's parts of, I can't turn this over to a client, they're going to move blocks around and stuff like that. And if WordPress can implement a system to where that is no longer true, or the fear that exists is no longer warranted, then I feel like it's, again, it's our job to convince people to use Modern WordPress. So that being said, we want the tools in place, design and otherwise, to be able to say, hey, this is now in a place where you can safely build your client websites on it.
Yeah. In your job at WP Engine, in the advocacy team, what do you see as the couple most requested things with Modern WordPress? What are you hearing?
Probably responsive controls. I mean, it's sort of like an ambiguous idea or concept. There's, as it relates to true intrinsic design, there's stuff baked into WordPress now that I don't think people understand or realize is there. Mike McAllister just wrote a piece on his Ollie WP blog around this. I actually have that in my queue to talk more about, mainly fluid spacing and typography and things of that nature. Because again, a lot of people say, oh, well, WordPress can't handle, mobile whatever or media queries under certain circumstances, which is somewhat true. But the system that's in place now, using step spacing and fluid units like rems and viewport width and viewport height and stuff like that, really mean you can get like 90% there with what's at our disposal.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that's kind of what you're saying. What personally would you like to see? Is there a top 3 list that you want to see?
Oh, man.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm pretty good with working within the system. And I know I can take what's there quite a bit. I don't know if there's any, there's really, really, really just little minor nuances that I find here and there. And usually I just create a GitHub issue for the GitHub repository, or I'll ping, Nick Diego or Rich Tabor and say, hey, this workflow isn't as optimal as it should be. There's, I guess, the thing last week I ran into that I was like, well, that just would be so much easier if it worked a certain way. But, other than that, I think the biggest thing I want to see is the harmonization of the screens inside the dashboard, right? The site editor and the post and page editor, which I think even some implementation of that's happening inside of Gutenberg 15.8, which the release candidate may even be packaged up today. This is introducing the ability to work with and edit pages inside of the site editor. And that's the part where, because there's such a disconnect, right? You've got the traditional page and post editor. Then you go into the site editor's sort of initial screen, which is really, really nicely designed. But if you click a few things, then that goes away and you're in like yet another world. And so that harmonization is what I think I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, it's funny. I sat down with Ann McCarthy of Automatic some time ago. And one of the things that they're working on is actually changing and updating the dashboard UI a little bit. And we've seen Yoast do that recently. And I think the dashboard UI is antiquated. My biggest pet peeve right now is still the one that's always been the media library. It's looking so like for somebody who spends a lot of day doing client work and trying to organize stuff clients, I just wish they would do something with that mess like sooner than later. But I'm at the point now where I've found a million workarounds to get done what I need to get done. So it's not even a holdback. It just needs to be refreshed. I think it's coming actually in 6.3, the media library. So that would be,
from what I hear, that is true. At least some part of it.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is I think, and all the people in your role, people at Automatic and people like Nick and Rich to really go to people. Like if you're not following them on Twitter, you need to, like, honestly, because, and I consider them both good friends. I would say that Automatic as a whole has actually taken undertones to hire the right people. They've made the effort. They've hired people like Rich. They've hired people like Nick. There's somebody like Ann McCarthy in a developers and advocacy role that needs to be there. They've got people like my good friend Birgit Holly Hack up there doing amazing work. Like these people are front and facing for all the other people. And I would go so far as to say that even somebody like Matthias Ventura, who's the Gutenberg lead, he's really approachable. And a lot of people think he's not. I don't find that the case at all. So I think they've really listened to what the community is asking them for, really have.
Yep.
So I think,
well, if you think about it, the roles that they all have to play, sort of stewarding a software that powers 43% or whatever the number is these days of the internet, there's a lot. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of ways to do things, and to sift through. Even internally, like you've got people who have differing opinions on how a thing should be implemented. I don't necessarily wish to be a part of that as intimately as they are, because I can only imagine, some of the underbelly of all of that. But I think overall, again, we're 5 years in, as Josepha says, to a 10-year plan. And I just hope that we can make enough progress and we can keep enough people that we don't lose out to places that, obviously have been a competitor. Squarespace and Wix are the two that we always bring up. But even platforms like Framer and Webflow, and what I can only presume will be a Figma to web implementation at some point, because some of that stuff is so easy to use. I use Figma all the time. I would be interested to see what a Figma to web looks like. So
that's interesting. And on the Woo side, the big competitor, of course, is Shopify. I was saying about this e-commerce site I'm building, and I actually talked the client out of going to Shopify. So I kind of sat them down and said, you don't want to go there. And they're like, why? And I was doing some pricing, and I said, you know what? They said, well, it's only $39 US. And I said, no, it's not. Start to look at what you're asking for, and then realize none of that's in the $39 plan. And then you lose all control, and you know where that goes, right? So I think we still have some inroads to make there. I really do. So where do you see Modern WordPress going in the next couple of years?
Well, as we know, the roadmap, the phasing of it all goes into collaboration, and then outside of that, sort of the multilingual translational stuff. I'm going to be very curious to see like where the collaboration piece comes in. Think of it like Google Docs, where multiple people are in the thing at the same time and kind of doing things. I hope that it doesn't become trying to become just an all thing to everything sort of deal, right? Like where WordPress is, it's Linktree, it's Google Docs, it's this and that, because at some point, each of those features will not be as good as they should be, like in a vacuum or a silo. And so to some extent, I kind of hope WordPress just stays the course on what it's always been good at. Tumblr is a thing now, and I'm like, thank God we don't have post formats. If you remember those from however many years ago.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Things like that, where it's just like, you don't have to like include every feature, right? And
true.
I just love general website building, and I hope that we don't lose sight of that. And I hope we just continue to make that easier, and especially easier for the user to work within, because I can build a thing, but building a thing that people can't work with just isn't helpful for anybody.
No, I agree with you. And like, I'm not excited as a collab part as a lot of people. And I don't think it's as important. To a lot of people, it is. I think where it's going to cause problems, truthfully, is with hosting. And there's those $3.99 a month plans out there that people have gotten sucked in. I think I can use that word on my own show to buying. And those plans just aren't going to cut it. The resources aren't going to cut it. And I think what people need to do in the WordPress, especially business owners, is start treating hosts like WP Engine and others. There's some other good hosts out there, let's be honest, and as your partner, not as your vendor. And I think that is so important, Brian.
Yeah, with the collaboration piece coming, post revisions are going to become more important than they've ever been, because generally you've got one person going in there doing a thing. But once you start implementing a system where anybody, just think of Google Docs, right? Like the most useful feature of Google Docs is, hey, what's changed? Go into like the post revision to see who did what and how things moved around. That being said, a big site with lots of articles and multi-authors, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of post revisions and storage and database things. And so to your point, the host of choice will become even more important as things scale up like that.
And so will things like backup plugins, because some of the backup plugins do not handle, large databases really well. And as far as I'm concerned, and being in that space, I think you need to do backups on two fronts, at the site level and at the host level. And I know some of these hosts are going to come on and criticize me and say, oh, we do it all for you. Guess what? Backup servers have been hacked and taken out. So if you care about your business, don't put your eggs in one basket. So that's kind of my model. I really appreciate you jumping on, as always, Brian, and your insights. If somebody wants to talk Modern WordPress, how did they join Build Mode, and how did they get a hold of you?
To join Build Mode, they would go to wpengine.com/builders. We have an events link in the upper right-hand corner that sends you to a page that essentially is where you can go sign up. And as you know, and others know, we usually have 3 or 4 registration links out into the future, generally with like the topics at hand. So you can put a bunch of things on your calendar if you want. So that's for Build Mode. At Twitter's probably the best way for people to reach me. I have my personal website, briangardner.com, which I do and don't use often and infrequently. So twitter.com/bgardner is usually the best way to follow me, to see what I'm working on. I share everything I do, working otherwise online there. And then that's just a good place to connect, because I'm there often. So
thanks, Brian. Always appreciate your time and your insights. You have a wonderful day, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
This podcast is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing agency for all your business needs. We are also your WordPress security experts, having over 14 years of experience locking down, backing up, and protecting WordPress websites. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com for more info.
A very special thank you to Brian Gardner for joining me
for links
on this
to everywhere
edition
we can
of
be
the
found
SDM show.
on the web. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. I love you, and I think about you every day. For more information about Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital marketing experts, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com or go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info to find out all the great places that Rob Cairns can be found on the web.